But I will never forget the shooting in June in Los Angeles of that pilot for 6 weeks before they put a cooling unit in the set. And here I am, New York actor, man. You know, I'm not going to take breaks. You know, I have the New York actor work ethic. I'm going to be on that suit. I'm going to be on that set. It almost killed me. The problem was you get so hot that suddenly, you know, you didn't realize it, but you were slowly listening to the left, and you know, they're going. They tell you to do something. What? You know, because I mean, it's like from sheer heat exhaustion. Then they came up with a vest like race car drivers wear with tubing in it, and it was the funniest looking thing. They got a picture of me because I couldn't sit down, so they brought out the old Warner Brothers Betty Davis lean board. You know what I mean? I felt real masculine, real macho superhero here. I couldn't sit down, so I'd climb up on the thing. They'd fold the thing back. I had a hose coming out of the back of it. They'd plug me into an ice chest. And I'd be up there like this, like with a cigarette and a Diet Coke. I was like, don't let anybody get a picture of this. You know, it'd be the end of the show. You know? But, yeah, there was some wild stories. I just got off the padded elevator with the group. We took the express elevator that was padded. It reminded me of the time that Mark Hamill, which also plays into the fact that we were so exhausted shooting this show, you know, and Mark Hamill comes on so excited to be there. It's the minute Mark found out there was going to be a Flash show, he began to lobby for the part of the trickster. In fact, it forms the basis of his Joker. You know, the boys say it's the same book. Oops. Well, he has his comic book store going on in Vancouver. He came on like, I will kill myself to make this good. And we're like, we have been killing ourselves for 3 months. But it was like, it's like, shh. But it was so great, his energy. And he actually, when he was in the padded cell with the straitjacket, he actually was throwing himself up against the padded cell. He dislocated his shoulder. For real. That's the kind of, well, you know, just like if you get somebody on the set or on a job that's real negative, that kind of energy is infectious. Then suddenly it'll drag everybody down. You get somebody that's really excited about being there and really hyped up. You're like, well, hey, Mark Hamill's pretty excited about this. Maybe this is pretty cool. Yeah, that's all right. You know, I tried to take that lesson through all my subsequent jobs, including this last stint at One Life to Live. You know, because it's very popular. I mean, soap acting is such a different animal. You know what I mean? And it's very easy to fall into, I'm too good for this. This is my day job, but I'm really too good for this. You know, that's poison. That will poison anything you do.
Call it reading your own press.
Yeah. I mean, you got to take whatever work it is. And I went into One Life to Live like, this is the coolest thing. Nobody's going to be texting on their phones during 5-minute breaks. We're going to figure out how to fix this dialogue, and we're going to, I don't know, maybe we should set the sofa on fire. You know, metaphorically. You know, we're going to have fun with it, and, you know, it just makes it all a better experience for everybody. Does anybody have any questions? I'll stop talking for a moment. Yes?
Big fan since GML.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. The Speedo and You Needed Me. I promise I don't have it on. And even if I did, I would.
Are there negotiations in the works for you to be on Big Bang Theory?
You know what? I'll be quite honest, probably more candid about that than I should be.
I'd love to see it.
You know, there's a whole group. I mean, it is such a no-brainer. The fact that it has not already happened indicates to me that perhaps I have a problem over there. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't go through 30 years in the business without making a lot of friends and a few enemies. So it is puzzling to me. People have said it, and once I started paying attention, I was like, yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer to have me walk through since The Flash is such a big deal. And I have benefited from the fact, you know, that there has not been another live-action Flash yet. You know, so I've kind of had like an extended adolescence, you know, flashness, you know, from the fact that there hasn't been another one. But I have to say, the fact that that has not happened already makes me think it's probably not going to happen because there's probably a reason. Some enemy that I made, I have no idea. But please call. Feel free. Write. Call your congressman. You know? I mean,
Wesley Shipp, we want him on Big Bang Theory Facebook page.
there's a Facebook group about it. But
I just read about it on the, I had to pull up, IMDb. No.
IMDb, yeah, International Movie Database,
Yeah.
which I invite you all to go to, and you can search me because I get points every time you do that. And it goes to the rankings, and believe me, people pay attention to that. When they're casting, they'll go check out your ranking, which you see if you pay money. Enjoy IMDb Pro. But even IMDb, which is free, will tell you if that particular actor, you can search any actor, any director, if the ranking has gone up or down.
I didn't know y'all got points for it, though.
Oh, yeah, when it says see
I'm
rank,
always using it, so.
There's the little arrows that on the
I thought
page.
it was like the fan, the people using the page. I didn't realize that that was.
It's
just on that
who's
account.
looking at the page. So
How many
people
hits
can
you
tell
get.
How popular that actor is right now.
of course, we have people who sit there all day long. Refresh. refresh. Look, I'm number 5, and I haven't worked in 10 years. Wow.
They're constantly on IMDb. Looking people up.
John Wesley Shipp. That's 2 P's. Anytime you. Yes, sir.
Question on that time frame, of course, your version of the Flash, you did a version of the Flash, you say the Flash came out. Was it 1 or 2 years right after Burton's Batman? I was wondering, I know there's long lead times on that too. I was just wondering how much time did you have maybe to get into the role without actually worrying about seeing what someone else had done with the DC property on that? How did you sort of get your own life on that too?
Yeah, it was, these things were all in development at the same time. So the tones really had been set. It wasn't that we were following the success of Batman. It's that modern sensibility around comic books had evolved at the same time that all the projects were coming at it, from the same side. I have never seen a Batman movie. I was one of the things that I still have, a clip that I saved was Picks and Pans, in which it was one of the greatest things that was written. I felt very humbled by the fact that TV Guide had said, without benefit of the big screen treatment. They talked about Warren Beatty, they talked about Michael Keaton, they said that, I will even quote it, they said that without the benefit of the big screen treatment, that I ran rings around my competition. They talked about my subtle sense of humor and self-effacing charm, if you must know. I'll tell you another thing that my mom was incensed about. They said that Shipp, playing the title role, is effective in the title role, saved from boringly perfect good looks by a slightly mashed off-center face. My mom is slightly mashed. Who wrote this? Mom, it's a good thing. Trust me.
I think one thing that actually I'm not sure how many people were actually around. It was actually after high school for me when we were actually in the show. But I seem to remember itself is that when Tim Burton cast, when Nicholson and as well as Keaton were cast, there were, this is before the internet, of course, but there were male campaigns saying you cast it wrong.
You can't do it. Keaton
yeah.
particularly.
Yeah, Keaton particularly on that too.
There's a lot of
you see
pushback.
him in his other films, so that this is inspired by that too. But I don't recall. This is one of the things I remember too. There was that's what no debate. Oh, he's a Flash, and that was one of those things. I'm not sure if you've ever gotten that before on that too, but there was absolutely no question in the actual casting before the movie. They said, "Oh, the Flash is coming out. Who's playing it? Oh, there he is." And he's yes, but that's the Flash. And even afterwards too, I think people like me long reflected there was not another season or something to wrap up as well as that. He's a Flash. I mean, there's no debate. He is a Flash. And so,
Carla Christie, thank you for saying that. The head of publicity had said to me once, it was a little frightening actually, happening. So she said, "This is the role you were born to play." I was like, well, I hope not. I hope it isn't over already. But I was very gratified that they did notice from the Washington Post. I mean, they did talk a lot about the acting. Now, part of that was because Danny and Paul wrote some layers to the characters to play. And I was very gratified that unlike a lot of special effects in sci-fi shows, they did spend a lot of time talking about the acting. They were very complimentary. Of course, there was always that one review. Whoever reviewed The Flash for the Associated Press, I mean, if you can pull that up anywhere, it is worth a read. It is the most insulting thing that had ever been written about me, but my favorite line was, they said, oh yes, and the big moment where Barry discovers his of course I remember the bad ones, right? He says, where Barry discovers his brother, and he's supposed to be this big primal scream over the body of his brother. It sounds more like the Flash is suffering from a snap to trust. I was like, ouch! But the whole thing was so personal and so mean. But it was the only one, thankfully. And I thank you for that. But since I was bragging on a review from TV Guide, I figured I should see the other side. But you read these things and you go, it's like, oh my God.
I have plenty of experience with critics watching movies that walk out halfway through and still review it, so I don't give bad reviews any credence.
Or they send assistants and they have never even seen the movie. Sir, did you have your hand up?
This isn't about the Flash, but what got you interested into acting to begin with, and how did you know how to pursue it?
I initially started in music at Indiana University in Bloomington, and then I switched my major to theater, and I did a couple productions at IU, and then a professor of mine was moving to New York. He was leaving the faculty, and he was going to be living with his friend Denise up in New York. And he said, we all did theater together in Michigan that summer, and he said, if you go back to school, go in New York. He said, the business is getting younger and younger. He says, why don't you? So I actually dropped out of IU and went up to be, I kind of had a built-in sort of mom and dad. I moved in with Denise and Peter. So those first hard months, CCH Pounder was one of our group, a wonderful actress. Oh my God, what's her name? African-American actress. She just died recently. She was the voice of the Moon in a kid's show. We were with the same agency. Wonderful actor. Anyway, she was part of that group of people. And so I sort of moved in with a little family that said, thank you, Lynn Thigpen. Lynn Thigpen, and what a shock that was. Yeah. Along with, of course,
she was on a television show at the time. She was
I had just seen her. My family was visiting out in LA, and we bumped into Lynn, and what a shock. The only other shock I've had like that is I was actually on set about to do a scene when I learned that Jonathan Brandis had hung himself. And of course, Jonathan was my son in Never Ending Story 2, and then came on and did, was it 1 or 2 episodes of Flash, the Child's Play episode. Such a young, talented, nice, good guy that couldn't find any other way out. But I'm sorry, I've deviated off of, what got me into acting. And so, so that was it. So I got in, and they're the ones that, they sort of led me through. They said, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to get a Ross Reports. You got to start taking classes down at Herbert Berghoff Studios, where Uta Hagen, who was the original Martha, and who's married to Virginia Woolf, great American actress, she and her husband had this studio. You make connections while you're going to school. You make postcards. You get your 8x10s, your resumes. You send out your resumes. You follow it up with a postcard. I sent you my resume last week. Followed up with a phone call. Send another postcard. They had it down to a science. You do showcases for no money while you're waiting tables. Hopefully you'll get an agent interested in you, and that's what happened. Lynn's agent, Michael Thomas, he was also Margaret Hamilton's, the witch in The Wizard of Oz was her. He had a small boutique agency, but he had some real quality clients. Started submitting me, and then at the end of 1979, I got Showtime's first original production for TV. They were doing a Best of Off-Broadway series. Tom Ian, great experimental writer out of La Mama and experimental theater in New York City, and wrote the book for Dreamgirls. They were doing Passion of Dracula, Me and My Girl, and The Dirtiest Show in Town. Mine was The Dirtiest Show in Town. And in fact, and then he directed that, and then the next month I got Kelly, The Lady Has Left, on Guiding Light, where I was running around in my Speedo singing "You Needed Me," and that was the beginning of the career where I haven't had to do anything else. But all those nude scenes, particularly the nude group sex scene in Dirtiest Show in Town, we had these writers writing into Procter & Gamble, "How can you have this guy on your show? Don't you know what he just did?" It was showtime. But that's kind of how it evolved. And then one thing led to the next. A writer, and I've been lucky. People have said, playing a superhero, weren't you afraid you would get typed? I said, well, I was allowed to bust my type early on, because I went on as good guy Kelly Nelson for 4 years. Good guy doctor, the nauseating guy that every girl's mother wants her to marry, but she really wants, the guy wearing the leather jacket. But the head writer of that show jumped to world terms, and he knew that there was more to me than just running around in Speedo and singing "You Needed Me," so he crafted this incredible part that went from that all the way into friggin' insanity. And I was playing opposite Julianne Moore and Steven Weber, and I won my first Emmy for that. So right on the heels of my first big splash as a good guy was this psycho role, and it's been, as I say, it's been superheroes and psychopaths ever since. Is there anything better? I couldn't have it any other way. Yeah. So.
One of your fellow cast members I want to inquire about. She and I are big fans of a long-running primetime soap called Dallas. Priscilla Pointer played Victoria Principal's mother on that show, and she was your mother on The Flash. What was your experience working with Miss Pointer?
She was awesome. She's also Amy Irving's mother, unless I'm confusing a different mother from a different show. Ruma Flanagan. She is Amy Irving's mother. Yeah. Yes, she's awesome. It was great to have, because it was just like, it's exactly the relationships were what you saw. There you had M. Emmett Walsh, legend already from, what was it, Blood Simple? No, what was that thing he did? The big one. It was very stylized, the big, huge movie. I can't think of the name. Anyway, there's M. Emmett Walsh, who's kind of cranky, and then there's Priscilla, who just couldn't be lovelier, more nurturing, more supportive. I'll never forget that dinner table scene. Again, here I am, eager actor from New York. I want to make everything real. So, families having dinner. Man, I'm had some potatoes, I'm having a little. I look down at the end of the table, and here's Evan sitting with his hands in his lap, just watching me with this smirk on his face. I'm thinking, what's that about? So, we do the master shot, in which I have brilliantly performed all of this eating business, and he's laughing. And I said, Emmett, what are you laughing at? He said, you're going to have to match all of that business you just did. You're going to have to know exactly where the fork came to the mouth, on what line, and you're going to have to duplicate all of it. So I thought there are advantages to keeping your hands in your lap. Never. I have never kept my hands in my lap. But I never forget once we were doing a scene, and Emmett was like, what are you looking at? I said, Emmett, I wasn't looking at anything. I was thinking. It's like, oh. I got Emmett's respect at the end of one scene, and that was the scene in the graveyard. But up until that moment, I had one relationship with Emmett Walsh. After that scene with I've Got the Bullet, suddenly our relationship changed, and I felt like we were colleagues. He was just great. He couldn't have had a better. Barry could not have had a better dad, and it was an awesome experience. And the two of them together, Priscilla, they perfectly balanced. You could see how that odd relationship between two different personalities, they would sort of balance each other out. It was a great experience in many ways.
What was your worst injury from the job?
I actually have just had elbow surgery. My worst injury was and it's aggravated from something that actually started all because I've had my elbows. I was always very hard on my elbows because I was always falling off. But I remember this one stunt where I was in a bathrobe and Barry had a cold, and he's sitting on a slick leather chair. I'm sitting on a slick leather chair, and I sneeze. And then I sneeze. And the chair goes all the way around across the room, slams into a bookcases, which collapses on. So they got it all right. There I am sitting on this slick leather couch. They had, ropes tied around the legs. They had, the Teamsters were there, we're going to get it. The only thing they forgot was to strap me into the chair. The chair goes, I'm suspended in midair, and wham, down on an elbow. So I would periodically have to have that drained. I've since had that bursa taken out, so that won't. But that wasn't very bad. You should have Dane, the stuntman, in here talking about it. Of course, he says nothing. Nah, I didn't have any injuries. Stuntman ethic. Have I babbled on for an hour?
We still have 10 minutes.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
You mentioned you haven't seen any of the Batman movies, but we've always heard their complaints with the bat suit. Did you have any issues? Obviously, you said you couldn't sit down, but like head movement, their biggest complaint was always they couldn't turn left or right.
Every suit has its problems. Since the Flash's thing was movement, thank God, they were not going to come up with, an immovable suit. I think if it were being done today, they would, in fact, if you'll notice, in the pilot, the suit was bigger. The traps were just outrageously enormous. They did, by the time they got to Pollux even, and they built that suit, it was much more streamlined, because he was too muscle-bound. I mean, and I'm sure when they do the movie, it'll be a much more aerodynamic thing. Our problems were different from their problems, but we had them. It was heat. I would be in the suit for 10, 15 minutes, and you could literally walk up to me and squeeze me, and water would pour out.
So the suit retained water?
What happened? What it was the way they built the suit was they greased me down, they wrapped me in cellophane, then they put a spandex suit over me, and they had already sculpted individual foam latex muscles, which they then glued onto. And I was wondering, why are you greasing me down? Why are you wrapping me in cellophane? It's because the glue, when it was setting, got very hot. So I had a couple little burns even with the. So they didn't do this every time I put the suit on. This is how they built the original 4 suits at a cost of $100,000, which was a lot of money in 1990. And then they glued individually. It was my muscle structure, but obviously exaggerated. And then they flocked it with a red material, which gave it the red effect, and then shaded in a darker red. And so, well, I was sweating so much through it that it looked like. I thought it was kind of cool, actually. I don't know why they fixed it. I would sweat through the suit, and it would look like the muscles. Like the muscle, they were muscles and they were sweating, but you can't find that anywhere in the comic book. I don't think so. Anyway, they ended up spraying it with a sealant, which meant now, not only is it hot, but nothing is getting out and nothing's getting in. So, I mean, I would take off the gloves and they'd be filled with water up to that. They'd just turn them upside down and pour it out. Dehydration was a constant. Constant issue. So it was the heat and the fact that they had to glue all of this, all here and under here. They had to glue that. And at the beginning, it was such a hard show to shoot that they would schedule not according to my comfort, but, okay, what can we do? So I was going in and out of the suit. So they put makeup on. They take the makeup off. They put the glue on. They take the glue off with acetone. They put makeup over where they had just taken the glue off. They take the makeup back off. They'd glue it back on. And I was raw under here. And then we had to set some guidelines. We had to have a meeting and say, look, here's the deal. We start with Barry. We do all of Barry's scenes. Because for the first Barry scenes I ever shot were at 3 in the morning after being in the suit for 14 hours. I said, Barry first, then Flash. If we absolutely have to, Flash scenes first, and then Barry. But we don't go Flash, Barry, Flash, Barry, Flash, Barry. The other issue we had was, since I was sweating so much, the suits began to crumble almost from the first episode. There was constant maintenance. In fact, if you look closely in a couple of, the scenes, and they couldn't clean them. This is why when people say, have you still got a suit? I'm like, no, thank God. And I was almost nauseated when I found out that one was actually in a plexiglass case in a Planet Hollywood in Orlando, that close to people's food. They couldn't clean them, so they would, I'd pull them off. They'd hang mine, 2 for Dane, 2 for me. And they'd hang it. They'd hang them in my trailer, my suits in my trailer. And they'd spray them with Lysol, but they couldn't clean them. And I'd put them back on, they'd still be wet. So then, of course, what happened. Completely broke out all over my back, from they were sticky and wet. So those were our suit issues. Of course, I always tell everyone, I could have avoided the whole thing by simply saying no to the park, and I wasn't going to do that. Oh, the wings? Yeah, people always say, do you have anything of the suit left? So I was so ready to get out of that freaking suit that Mark Hamill and I were down in some godforsaken hole in southeast Los Angeles because we were nominated for art direction for an Emmy, by the way. It was kind of we had 40s, 50s, 60s meets 90s. It's like the 70s and 80s never happened, which when you stop and think about it, anyway. And so there's always wanting these particular buildings, but they were always in these dilapidated parts of the city. They'd be putting down plyboard over, syringes and rat feces, so that we weren't actually walking, but so that they could get a shot and they could light the sticker. So it's 5 a.m. We're down with the Bloods and the whatever the names of the gangs were, Oh, and one of the gang's colors were red. Thank you very much. There I am running around in a red foam latex suit. It's like, why don't you just draw a bullseye on my forehead? And so we're there, and we do the last shot of the last episode. I take the ears, I rip them off and throw them in the air. Well, Mark had lost his mind. He yelled. I was like, I didn't know if I hit him. I didn't know what I was doing. Don't let him get away! He's like crawling over cables and behind trash cans. Man, he got those ears. I bet he still has the ears from one of those suits. But no, it never occurred to me. I'm just thinking, I said that, that year we got good news and we got bad news. The bad news was we weren't going another season, and the good news was we weren't going another season.